In 1982, the record charts in this country of ours rang to a very different tune when a group called Red Gum shot to the top with a song written by its lead singer, John Schuman. It was the first real musical recognition that we had been in Vietnam. John is with us today to sing I Was Only 19, and the song was written about a man called Frank Hunt, a farm boy from the Mallee in Victoria, who in 1967 was driven by the Mallee drought to join the army. After 2 years in the regular army, he was sent then to Vietnam, where after 3 months, a landmine blew off part of his leg. And he's going to join us after John sings the song which was dedicated to him back in 1982. John Schuman.
Mum and Dad and Denny saw the passing out parade at Puckapunyal. It was a long march from cadets, and the 6th Battalion was the next to tour. It was me who drew the card. We did Canungra and Shoalwater before we left, and Townsville lined the footpaths as we marched down to the quay. This clipping from the paper shows us young and strong and clean. And there's me in me slouch hat with me SLR and greens. God help me, I was only 19. From Bung Tower riding Chinooks to the dust of Newey Dat, I'd been in and out of choppers now for months, and we made our tents a home VB and pin-ups on the lockers, and an Asian orange sunset through the scrub. And can you tell me, doctor, why I still can't get to sleep? And night time's just a jungle dark and a barking M16. What's this rash that comes and goes? Can you tell me what it means? God help me, I was only 19. Four-week operation, when each step could mean your last one on 2 legs. It was a war within yourself, but you wouldn't let your mates down till they had you dusted off. So you closed your eyes and you thought about something else. And then someone yelled out, "Contact!" and the bloke behind me swore. We hooked in there for hours, then it got almighty raw. Frankie kicked a mine the day that mankind kicked the moon. God help me, he was going home in June. I can still see Frankie drinking tinnies in the Grand Hotel on a 36-hour rec leave in Bung Tower. I can still hear Frankie lying screaming in the jungle till the morphine came and killed the bloody row. And the ANZAC legends didn't mention mud, blood and tears, and the stories that my father told me never seemed quite real. I caught some pieces in my back that I didn't even feel. God help me, I was only 19. And can you tell me, doctor, why I still can't get to sleep? And why the Channel 7 chopper chills me to my feet? And what's this rash that comes and goes? Can you tell me what it means? God help me, I was only 19.
Thank you, John. John Schuman, who's about to join us. I made mention before that that song was dedicated to and written about a man called Frank Hunt. And Frank, like so many other Vietnam veterans, have had times that have not been easy since they've been back. I'm not too sure if Frank would tell you the story or not, but I can tell you that he was told by an RSL vice president in Sydney, you can drink here when you've been to a real war. And that's the sort of thing that they had to contend with. And anybody who is in that boat will tell you that's the case, or was the case, fortunately. Now, hopefully, things have improved. Please welcome Frank Hunt.
Welcome, Frank. Thank you, Bert.
And you're joined now by John. Well done, John. Frank, that was no exaggeration, was it?
No exaggeration. There was 2 other veterans with me that day, and I wasn't typical of the ordinary Vietnam veteran. In many ways, I wasn't typical. First of all, I was a 3rd generation. My grandfather fought in the Middle East in the Light Horse and was hit in the left leg. My father fought in New Guinea and was hit in the left leg. And then I went to Vietnam and I was hit in the left leg. So that wasn't typical. Also, the fact is, I suppose I might put it down to the good-heartedness of the Malay people, but they gave me a wonderful farewell. Even after spending 19.5 months in hospital, they gave me a wonderful welcome home. And so there, for the first time, I was able to see the bitterness, the separation between soldier and the public. And I resolved then, that day I saw that in that club in Sydney, that I was going to make sure those fellas also were recognised and given a welcome home as well.
We can only imagine what the gut feeling would be when you've been to a dirty war such as Vietnam and you come back to your own country. It's not so much even that you're ignored, it's just a case of people pretending it never happened.
Yeah, hiding it under the carpet is one way of putting it, I suppose, but also the fact is not recognising the soldiers apart from the politicalisation of the war. And I think that's where we felt bitter, that we were sent over by the government of the day, and let's face it, the government of the day are the people of Australia, and then not being recognised in any way, shape or form. But we were recognised as killers, we were recognised as child murderers, we were recognised as people who did all sorts of insane acts. And the Australian soldier wasn't like that. I mean, the Australian soldier was very dedicated and still believed in the tradition of the ANZACs. And I know when I went over there, I think I was just so proud to wear the khaki uniform and continue on the tradition of my father and my grandfather.
John, I can recall being in radio when that song came out, and on its first playing, the switchboard just lit up. And I might mention that half were for and half were against. That percentage changed pretty quickly, and people all of a sudden got the real meaning of the song. How did it come about? Did you know Frank personally?
No, I didn't know Frank. I knew a friend of his who was in the same platoon as Frank, and he'd come to see me when I was playing in Red Gum, and I'd always wanted to write a song about Vietnam because I figured it was about time, and I figured that I could do it. But the thing was, at that particular stage, the Vietnam veterans did not talk about their experiences to those outside the brotherhood, if you like. Mm-hmm. Now, this bloke, this friend of mine, he came to see the band and he liked what we were doing, and I asked him whether he would talk to me about his experiences, and for the first time in 10 years he spoke to somebody outside the Vietnam Veteran Brotherhood. We spent about 3 days together locked in a room, and I interviewed him. I had about 9 cassettes full, and we poured over maps and charts and photographs and bits of his Vietnam memorabilia that he kept in a little cardboard box at the bottom of his wardrobe. And there were a lot of tears, and it was a pretty heart-rending exercise for both of us. And for the next 4 or 5 months, I just listened to those tapes and I thought about it and I thought about it. And I actually wrote the song here in Melbourne, in Carlton. Even though I'm from Adelaide, I was living in Carlton at the time. And I went out one morning and I put my guitar on my lap. I had a cup of coffee on the sleeper seat in the garden, and the song just came tumbling out like it was already written. And then, of course, I sang the song to Michael, who was the bloke who opened his heart. And he said, well, you better go and sing this song to Frankie. So when I was going through Bega on a tour, I knocked up Frankie and said, I'm John Schuman, I'm a mate of Mick's, and I've written this song that I think you should hear. And that's when Frankie and I became mates. And from there I went to the Phil Thompson, who was the president of the Vietnam Veterans Association, and played the song to him, just to make sure that it wasn't offensive.
Sure. And
to make sure that I got it all right.
Well, and you know now, in 1989, it certainly wasn't offensive, and I'm sure you would agree, Frank, that it helped to right that terrible wrong.
Oh, there's no doubt about that, Bert. I can still recall the very moment that John played that song. And I was in a motel room down the beach in Tathra, and he completed the song, and I was just full of tears were just rolling down my face. And I left that motel room and I walked on the beach for approximately 20 minutes. And it was like a purging for me. Well, then I came back, and when John and I went to Sydney, we went out to Concord Hospital, out to the psych ward, and we saw grown men from the Vietnam War. We saw the wives and the kids of these Vietnam veterans, and just the purging of it all, the tears. The beautiful thing about, I think, that I was only 19 is done. And it's giving the Vietnam veterans a base to work from, a recognition. But most importantly, it's educated the children. Kids that were born after the war had no idea or recognition of what that war was all about. And it's educated them that the only ones that win a war are the ones that make the money out of it. The victims are always the soldiers and their families. There's no winners in war.
Frank, I thank you for sharing part of your ANZAC Day with us. It's your day as much as anybody else's. Have a good day. Have a great day. And John, thank you for your
Thanks very much.
John Schuman and Frank Hunt. We'll take this break.